Do you ever feel just a little bit too happy? Like you wake up in the morning and you think, wow, today is gonna be a great day. Well, if you wanna ruin that, then I have a mini series perfect for that. If you watched a little show called Baby Reindeer that came out about 2 years ago, the creator, Richard Gadd, came out with another miniseries this year. One that is more violent, more traumatic, and unfortunately, I think even longer. Unfortunately, because it's really hard to watch, but it's a really good show. It's called Half Man. It's about this really codependent, homoerotic, tumultuous bond between two stepbrothers. They're not actually related, but their mothers are in a relationship. It is a 6 episode miniseries. It came out weekly, but it just ended, I think, this week, last week. I don't know, episode 6. It is a story that is aiming to look into a bunch of things, going from abusive, toxic family relationships, queerness, and how being repressed and being forced to hide because of society really messes you up inside and doesn't bode well for your future, in how some bonds can be really full of love, but that kind of obsessive, toxic love that you cannot really walk away from, especially when that affection, that love for a person comes with a lot of baggage of violence and fear and confusing abuse for love, confusing the terror for passion. So we're following Niall and Ruben, who are stepbrothers because their mothers are in a relationship that everyone kind of understands that is romantic, but they're not out because this is the late 80s, early 90s, and you couldn't just do that. The first introduction to the two of them on the show is at Niall's wedding, where we get a shot of them. It seems like they have a lot of baggage, a lot of things going on that we don't know about. And this is the present timeline, and then we jump back when they are 15, 17 years old, and we see how their relationship happened. And the past timeline takes us from when they are teenagers to their 30s, 40s, like just this whole half of a life that they lived in each other's orbit, and how that shaped and affected the both of them, especially how Ruben's influence really messed up and informed all of Niall's life. The first time we see Niall as a teenager, he's 15 years old, he's a scrawny kid, he's in the middle of being bullied. The first scene we see him on the show is him being bullied by a bunch of other kids. And it's one because they think he might be gay, but also because his mom is gay, even though she's not out. They all know why these middle-aged women are living together in the same house in the way. Niall is really repressed. He's scared all the time. He's being neglected by his mom, who cares more about her partner than about her literal child. His mom's partner has a son who just came out of juvenile detention after biting someone's nose off, which is a pretty good sign for what's about to happen in the show. But her kid is out and is gonna live with them, so they're now living in the same room. Ruben comes in, just ripping Niall's things off the walls and putting his own in. He comes in like a hurricane. He's much bigger, scarier, he's very confident. He's that type of teenage boy who's very violent and in your face, and that performance of hypermasculinity that you do to integrate in this society that definitely comes from some form of insecurity, but Niall can know that. Niall only knows that he's now bunking with someone who is threatening him every time he tries to speak. So definitely not a very fun time for Niall. And this dynamic is so clear. You have this person who's really scared, repressed, and very shy. He cannot even speak loud enough that people hear him. And then you have Ruben, who comes in just shouting and being violent, threatening. Just, they could not be more different. But they start forming this really, really close bond, this codependency, this really toxic dynamic, but that is filled with some homoerotic feelings, especially from Niall, because Niall is discovering who he is, and it's very easy to not understand that those butterflies you feel sometimes are warning signs because you're scared, but it is easy to kind of misunderstand that as being attraction when you're a literal teenager. The first two-ish episodes, when you see them as teenagers, are especially hard to watch because they do such a good job at putting you in Niall's shoes and making you feel all of his lack of understanding and self-understanding, lack of control over anything in his life. He's being neglected by his mom. He's being bullied. He's being definitely abused, but also kind of protected by Ruben. It's such a messy kind of dynamic that years and years of therapy would barely scratch the surface of. And then it makes so much more sense going from here to see how their life happens and how their dynamic evolves and everything. They end up being in their 20s, 30s, 40s by the end. It's a really interesting thing. It's such a short, it's 6 hours. The whole miniseries is just 6 hours. It's such a short look into these people's lives, but it's so well done. You feel like you just saw their whole life through these 6 episodes because it's so well done. You get flashbacks, you get more details, you get all the huge moments. It is so violent, it's so scary at times. Because Ruben is played first by Stuart Campbell, the teenage 17-year-old self, and by Richard Gadd himself as the adult. Both of them do such a great job at playing Ruben in that full scary teenager and then grown man self. Stuart Campbell is like 27. He's playing petulant, threatening, violent 17-year-old so well. And then Richard Gadd has great moments, especially because this character has such a assertive and what's the word? He seems like he's in such control of himself. Like he's always, standing tall and not caring about anything. But he is like one short moment away from going ballistic and killing someone. You feel in danger. You as the audience member on this other side of the screen. That's why it's so easy to feel the fear that Niall fears and the other characters, because you as the audience will feel that. It's a constant feeling of danger, wondering when this man is going to snap and do something. Because also Ruben does not give a fuck. As a kid and as an adult, he doesn't care about what's legal, what's moral. He will act on his anger and then think later, maybe not even that, and his actions are deplorable. This needs all the trigger warnings for everything you can imagine, honestly. Maybe not animal abuse, but it's really, really intense. I do believe it's super worth watching. I think it's touching on a lot of interesting things about this toxic masculinity and this pressure to perform masculinity as a boy and as a man, because it's this messaging, especially because it starts with them in the 80s, 90s, this messaging that if you are a boy, if you're a man, you have to act this one narrow path that is available for you. And if you're anything than that, then you are less of a person. And when it comes to being abused, being neglected, the parenting that gets a kid to become a violent adult, a reckless person, someone who will put themselves and other in danger. I really think they did a great job with that too, because there are many different types of parents in this show. You have the biggest ones. You have one that's outwardly and genuinely abusive. You have one that's neglectful and cares more about their partner than their kid. And you have one that will excuse their child's behavior, whatever they do, as the result of some uncontrollable thing that they cannot fix. And this kind of, not even permissive, it's beyond permissive. And all these things are so not conducive to someone becoming a well-adjusted person. And Niall and Ruben are the poster children for not well-adjusted, both in very different ways, but you see how their lives were dictated by what happened to them as children. And I think that makes it such a great but really terrifying show, because it's very realistic. You could see how all of that happened. And Ruben, especially, I feel is such a realistic person, abuser and protector, someone who is very loved but also deeply feared by the people around him. And also Niall, with all of his repression, with all of his fear, his refusal to stand tall on his own, and he's just leaning on everyone. It's an incredible show. So if you can stomach watching it, it's definitely worth it. Otherwise, I guess let me know, because I already watched it, so I can cover it episode by episode. If you want to live vicariously through my own trauma, we can do that as well. I did see a lot of people saying that this is not as good as Baby Reindeer. I feel like it's very different. Baby Reindeer was traumatic, but also it had kind of a veneer of comedy. And Half Man does have comedic moments where I actually laughed out loud. But this fear and this terror and this shadow of something bad is going to happen is always in the show. Baby Reindeer was always had a lot of moments of levity. This really doesn't. Even in the moments where you're not actively looking at something scary, you still expect something bad to happen. So whatever floats your boat into a moment, you might need to have something lighter on hand. Like, I don't know, a Disney movie, honestly, just might help. And let me know if you want me to tell you about the episodes so you don't have to watch them. I'm down for that as well. Like, I'll sacrifice myself for you, sure. Oh, happy Pride Month. I hope you're all having a decent enough month considering the world circumstances. Don't forget that joy is resistance. So go and shake ass.